If you're watching this live or on demand on our YouTube channel, wherever you are, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We thought we would provide an update on our sports coverage because we have over 12,000 subscribers and a lot of people who enjoy watching our games. Tomorrow, we start a new season with more volleyball coverage this fall. That's the sport we're going to be concentrating on most. But the number of games we do, you can expect to see a scaled down version. And the reason for that are the number of stations who have reached out to me and added me to their roster of announcers. So it's just a matter of math. There are a whole lot of them and just one me. When we started building up the TSB Television YouTube channel, it was meant to provide a window for games and teams and players who might otherwise go uncovered. It started after I had some discussions with one of the regional stations, and the thought was we would build up a network of sports coverage where we would air games on regional cable in the area and create an audience that way. But those efforts, unfortunately, didn't get off the ground. But in that process, that's when I realized, hey, if option A doesn't work, I had built up a lot of connections with the local cable stations in the Twin Cities area, and that would provide another olive branch for game coverage. And that has been our model for the last several years, giving us an opportunity to cover games all over the metro area and provide an olive branch to stations. They get extra programming. I get an opportunity to cover games. And that model had been working for the last few years, and we resumed that model last year once capacity restrictions were lifted and it was deemed safe for everyone who wanted to attend games in person again. But I learned something over the last year that has swayed our decision making in terms of the TSB television broadcast slate. And a lot of that has to do with metrics. So up until the pandemic, there was seemingly a legitimate path to make what we were doing self-sustaining. Our coverage was getting a lot of viewers. Some of our games were getting thousands of views within a day. A few of our basketball games have surpassed 100,000 views, which is quite remarkable. Women's basketball, our most popular sport. And even volleyball was getting some traction when we embraced that wholeheartedly a few years ago. And had the pandemic not taken place, maybe that pattern continues. But in the off year, the last year we covered sports before the pandemic dominated every aspect of our life in 2020. And our return last season, we had to make some changes because some games were called off due to COVID protocols. But across the board, our channel, and if you looked at the YouTube channels that local cable stations had run, the viewership levels weren't there. They weren't matching what we were drawing in the season before the pandemic. Now, I don't know what the reason is, if it's just one factor or multiple factors, but in hindsight, the pandemic accelerated the proliferation of streaming. Just about every school can set up a stream with their AI cameras that they use to review game film. and some have, other schools have aligned with live stream partners, which hasn't been a problem on our end because generally we don't cover games live to allow the opportunity for us to produce the broadcast like you would see on a major network, ESPN, CBS, the Turner Networks, etc. But with so many options now to follow your athletes, whether you want to wait for our coverage or if you want to see what's happening right now, if you want to watch live, there are a lot of ways you can go about it. But as a result of the decrease in viewership from our last season of coverage compared to our prior seasons, and I look back on the 3 years, 2017 to 2020, when our emphasis was building up the network of subscribers we have on the TSP Television YouTube channel. The data now suggests that the model we were hoping to present is no longer self-sustaining. That doesn't mean we're going to disappear entirely or not cover games anymore. But as the saying goes, the only constant is change. The only permanence is impermanence. And since the capacity restrictions were lifted last year, in that span, I have been added by 3 outlets in the Twin Cities area. So now I have to balance covering more games for these stations. And that has to be factored, that has to be considered with the games that we had planned on doing for the TSB Television YouTube channel. And when you look at the metrics, it makes sense for us to pull back a bit, to scale down. As I said at the start, there are a whole lot of stations out there and just one me. And another objective behind the TSP Television YouTube channel, once it became clear this was going to be the vehicle to present game coverage, the biggest one, of course, was providing a platform for athletes, and that is something we'll continue to do because a lot of parents and players, past and present, look back on those fondly when they have an opportunity to relive some of those memories that you may not think about in the moment, but once your athletic career is done, it brings back good memories. And we've always enjoyed doing that. So that was always our first objective, providing a window for athletes and giving them that feel of an ESPN game, because we know the vast majority of the athletes that you see in our sports coverage and beyond, they're not going to go Division I, they're not going to go pro, and that's not a knock on them. It's just a matter of numbers. There's only so many spaces available, and a lot of these kids do it when they pick it up for the first time because it's fun. So that was our first objective. The second objective behind the growth of the TSB Television YouTube channel was to create a calling card for myself. Up until recently, I had a hard time getting looks or opportunities from other stations, and that was something I was hoping to change, because broadcasting, sports broadcasting, has always been a passion of mine. It remains a goal. When people ask me, what's your dream job, your dream scenario? Broadcasting has provided the most stability of all the career avenues I've attempted. And so for me, it just makes sense to continue following that pursuit until something changes. But it's also a really tough business to get into if you don't have connections or networking. So the TSB Television YouTube channel was our workaround, where we could create opportunities on our own. So if stations weren't reaching out to me or my crew members to cover games that they were doing, we could come in and offer a reminder, offer a calling card, effectively provide an audition of sorts to any sports producers or talent scouts who might be looking to add an announcer to their roster. Now, I can't say for sure if the TSP Television YouTube channel was directly responsible for the increasing amount of opportunities that I'm receiving, but that was another goal. If you're having a hard time reaching out to people, get your name out there and find a way to make some space, generate attention for yourself. And that's something the TSP Television YouTube channel has done, as demonstrated by our growth in subscribers. 2 years ago, we celebrated our 10,000th subscriber, and that is a pretty remarkable achievement for what effectively amounts to a one-man band operation on the TSP television side of things. How much of that played into producers getting a hold of me, I don't know. But now that I am on the roster for at least a half dozen stations, it means I don't have to scrap as much to create these opportunities for sports broadcast coverage. And for that reason, I'll be focusing more attention on those outlets because they need announcers to function. Again, that doesn't mean we're going to be quitting our broadcasts, but now I have a situation where maybe there's some big time game, but one of these stations may be in need of an announcer. And I will admit, after returning last season and going all out in our sports coverage, there is a value, there is a satisfaction in covering a game where all you have to worry about is narration. I show up, I do the prep work, call the game, and then I go home. I don't have to worry about how the footage turned out, if I have to do any color correction, if I have to do any sort of quality control like we do on the TSP television side of things. Because again, with TSP television broadcasts, we generally air games on tape delay. And we did that to avoid competing with schools or entities that had live stream arrangements. And as we talked about before, it also gave us the advantage to dress up the game in ways that live streams cannot. But as the live stream operation continues to grow, you have to reassess the pros and cons. Ideally, I would love to turn these opportunities into a chance to call games either at the college level or with a larger network along the lines of ESPN or Big Ten Network. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of connections with the big boys, as the saying goes, and I'm not sure colleagues are going to be eager to hand out that information in a super competitive environment. It's everyone's dream to land those big network opportunities. And once you get there, you might want to protect what you have. I don't know if that's the reason, but I would be understanding if that was the case. I haven't reached that goal yet, but I am now at a point in my broadcast career. It took about 15, 16 years to get there, it seems. But I'm at a point where I no longer have to worry about, for now at least, I don't have to fret about trying to find sports opportunities or worrying about people calling me up or if I'm going to get ignored or if I have to forge myself into the discussion. The offers I've been getting over the last year suggest that what we are doing is getting noticed, whether it's through my YouTube channel or my work with other stations. So we'll have to see how this continues to evolve because, as we know, sports coverage and live streaming and all of that is continuously evolving. But last season we covered close to 60 regular season games, and then we did a couple of exhibition events. You probably aren't going to see that number this upcoming season on the TSP Television YouTube channel. Again, because of the metrics that suggest it would not be feasible with all the effort that goes into attending the game and then editing the game. We might have taken on a little too much. And on top of that, I now have more stations who have added me to their rosters. If you looked at my September schedule, the first half of the month is crazy. In fact, the week of Labor Day, at this point, I have a game scheduled every weeknight from that Tuesday through Friday. Labor Day, we take off because it's a federal holiday. And this upcoming week is no less busy. I've got volleyball tomorrow. I'll be doing the Champlain Park Lakeville North game, which you will see on the TSP Television YouTube channel and locally on CCX Media. Friday, I'm doing a soccer game for School Space Media. Saturday, I'm doing another soccer game for Game Time Media. And the following week, we have 2 volleyball games and 2 football games. So my schedule is already chock full of assignments. So when you factor all of that into consideration, that's why I thought it would be wise to take a few minutes and offer an update on the state of our sports coverage. Looking ahead, I would say you will continue to get high quality coverage of your favorite athletes in the Twin Cities area. That has always been our objective. You just won't see as many of our broadcasts as you have before because I have to juggle a half dozen stations on my assignment schedule. So the regular season coverage, we'll continue to do that as best we can. Section coverage, I don't think you'll see us involved in section assignments this upcoming season. In the past, we have done a combination of games on our own and games when we're affiliated with the local stations, but changes to the media policy from the Minnesota State High School League has seemingly made it more difficult for the local stations to participate in section playoff coverage. This year, again, on the TSP television side, we didn't have any plans to do section games on our own. The numbers, the metrics just weren't there to justify the time and effort that goes into it. Not to mention you have a much tighter time sensitivity with section games, especially the finals, because the state tournament for whatever sport we're covering usually takes place the following week. So it's a short window that doesn't give us a lot of time to dress it up and get it out there where it has value. I'll go into more details about it as far as my thoughts and my interpretation on the situation, but based on my understanding, you could have a scenario where more section finals go uncovered, and it's tough to get them all, especially for the larger sports. Volleyball has 4 classes, for example. Soccer has 3 classes. Each sport has 8 sections, so you multiply the number of sections by the number of classes. Well, in volleyball, that means you have 32 section finals. In soccer, you have 24. Basketball, you have 32, and so on. So there's a whole lot of sections and only so many of us. And I fear the athletes, the parents, and even the scouts are going to be the biggest losers with these changes. Again, I'll discuss it in more detail as our season of sports coverage begins, but I wanted to give you an update there in case you're wondering what our plans were for postseason coverage. So, given the circumstances, and you can go to the MSHSL website, they have the guidelines spelled out there, but my initial thought is more section finals will go uncovered, which means fewer memories will be made. That's the idea behind sports coverage, to create memories for these athletes, whether they go on to play professionally in whatever sport they choose, or doing this just for fun to give themselves an activity, a chance to bond with classmates, etc. You're going to have a lot of big moments that go uncovered based on my understanding. Things could change, as we've said multiple times already, and they usually do. No two seasons are alike. So that aspect I find troublesome in terms of access, but we'll talk more about that as the season moves along. So I wanted to thank all of you who took some time this afternoon to get an update on our sports coverage plans. And to reiterate quickly, we're ready for another season. We're going to have a few more volleyball games on the TSB Television YouTube channel. How many? I don't know, because now I am on the announcing roster for at least a half dozen stations. So you're going to find me multiple places, not just the TSB Television YouTube channel, and it honestly depends on the day. And I'll do my best to keep you posted, but we're excited, and I'm excited to have an opportunity and to get the chance to incorporate my skill set with these other outlets. After a full season of do-it-yourself ESPN self-produced games, it's nice to see those efforts pay off, and hopefully they will continue to pay off down the road. But the world of media is always in flux, and it requires a degree of patience. Speaking of patience, we're glad you've been patient as we made the transition between seasons, and I will leave you with this. Whatever our game coverage looks like, again, we're not going away entirely. We'll also have more episodes of our podcast series, Mic'd Up Sports. In fact, we have a new episode tentatively planned for next week, possibly a second. That's something we are always willing to do, and we have a standing invitation for any athlete or coach or anyone else in sports who would like to share their story. Because as much as we love game coverage, it's really hard to get your story out in a post-game interview that lasts maybe 5 minutes at most. So we're excited to continue providing a platform for athletes to share themselves in ways they might not get a chance to elsewhere. So you will see more episodes of Mic'd Up Sports. You will see more games. How many? It's just a matter of how much time we can commit. So with all the factors we're dealing with and all the things we're going to be talking about as a new season of high school sports kicks off this week, we're glad we can still play a part in telling you these stories, and I look forward to seeing what comes next. So we'll have plenty of games and new episodes of Mic'd Up Sports, and who knows what else you'll see on the TSB Television YouTube channel. We're always experimenting with new ideas, new concepts. And I certainly like to thank all of you who have subscribed to our channel over these last few years. About 5 years ago is when we embraced the idea of building our channel, and wherever it goes, the plan was always to create a calling card for these athletes and myself and the crew members who have taken their time to provide us with an unprecedented level of coverage that you don't see on a regular basis at the high school level. So thanks again for listening to this conversation, and we'll see you on the court and the field starting tomorrow. we can't wait to start up a new season and hopefully create some more memories for everyone who tunes in to our sports broadcast. So thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.